Between 1209 and 1229, in the region of Languedoc in southern France, a systematic military and cultural campaign was launched, directly affecting more than 1 million people over 2 decades. This was not a random conflict, but rather the result of a complex convergence of religious, political, and economic motivations in the context of centralized power from both the Catholic Church and the northern French monarchy. Today, we will analyze this campaign from historical and sociological perspectives to understand how systematic cultural destruction campaigns operate, and draw important lessons for safeguarding cultural heritage in the modern world. If you're interested in understanding history to protect and preserve the diversity of human culture, consider subscribing and leaving a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. Historical knowledge enables us to recognize and prevent similar patterns of cultural erasure today. To understand why the Albigensian Crusade could develop into a fully fledged, systematic campaign of cultural destruction, we must examine the broader context of 13th century Europe. According to research by Dr. Emmanuel Leroy-Ladurie of the Sorbonne, this period was characterized by 3 key elements. First, politically, the French monarchy was in the process of consolidating centralized authority under King Philip Augustus. Documents from the Archives nationales de France reveal that the Parisian court had strong motivations to extend its influence into the south, where local lords maintained significant autonomy. Second, socially, Languedoc had developed a distinct cultural identity rooted in the Occitan language, troubadour poetry, and a relatively egalitarian social structure. Research by Professor Michel Roquebert indicates that the literacy rate in the region was significantly higher, estimated at 15 to 20%, compared to 5 to 8% in northern regions. Third, economically, cities like Toulouse, Béziers, and Carcassonne had become thriving commercial hubs, developing financial independence that threatened both northern feudal powers and ecclesiastical control. These conditions created a fertile ground for the Cathar movement to flourish and simultaneously made the region a strategic target for both the Church and the northern French crown seeking cultural and territorial integration. Importantly, the Albigensian Crusade was not an isolated event. Similar models were implemented in other regions during the 12th and 13th centuries. In Spain, the Reconquista was not only a military campaign, but also a systematic effort to replace Islamic and Jewish cultural structures with Christian ones. Dr. Maria Rosa Menocal of Yale University notes that over 300 libraries and academic centers were destroyed or converted in the process. In the Baltic region, Northern Crusades targeted Slavic and Baltic tribes, seeking not only conquest, but also the complete erasure of local religious and cultural traditions. The Livonian Chronicle documents widespread destruction of sacred sites, the burning of texts, and the banning of native languages in rituals. This suggests that the anti-Cathar campaign was part of a broader, pan-European strategic model aimed at achieving religious and cultural uniformity, not merely a localized phenomenon. The campaign was legitimized through a series of papal decrees and ecclesiastical council rulings. According to documents from the Vatican secret archives, Pope Innocent III issued the decree Virgentis Insinium in 1299, formally equating heresy with treason and enabling property confiscation from the accused. This provided a legal framework for systematic violence and expropriation. The role of religion in justifying the campaign is well documented in Historia Albigensis by Pierre de Vaux de Cernay, which frames the destruction of Cathar culture as a sacred mission to cleanse the land of heretical contamination. This document also reveals how clergy created structured methods to identify and eliminate cultural elements deemed dangerous. According to Professor Mark Gregory Pegg in The Corruption of Angels, the campaign followed a clearly defined operational model with 3 primary mechanisms. Target selection, based on a complex classification system identifying individuals, families, and communities associated with the Cathar movement. Selection criteria extended beyond religious belief to include social status, economic power, and political influence. The Inquisition later evolved into a sophisticated intelligence-gathering apparatus, with 5,000 to 8,000 individual records created annually. Operations were managed by Dominican and Franciscan friars, following standardized protocols developed by Conrad of Marburg and later refined by Bernard Gui. Operational phases, research by Dr. Anne Brennan, shows that each targeted region underwent 3 distinct phases. 1. A 6 to 12-month intelligence and target listing period. 2. A 3 to 6-month military and asset seizure operation. And 3. A 2 to 5-year cultural and religious restructuring phase. These phases were carried out by crusader forces, newly appointed local authorities, and specially trained conversion clerics. Surveillance network. Implemented through the construction of over 200 new religious institutions in the 30 years following the campaign, each tasked with monitoring local religious compliance. Data from the Bibliothèque nationale de France supports the strategic role these institutions played in long-term control. Quantitatively, modern researchers estimate the campaign directly impacted between 1 and 1.5 million people from 1209 to 1255, roughly 80% of the population in Languedoc at the time. Annual rates of heresy accusations and punishments ranged from 15,000 to 25,000 during peak years 1220 to 1240. The most heavily targeted areas included Toulouse, Albi, Carcassonne, and Béziers, where as many as 90% of families were investigated. In terms of demographics, Inquisition records show that adults aged 16 to 60 made up 75% of all accused individuals. Dr. James Given of the University of California notes that these figures highlight not only the campaign's scale, but also its systematic and prolonged nature, unmatched by earlier religious persecutions. Why did this campaign remain effective for decades when other efforts quickly collapsed? One reason is information control, achieved by monopolizing education and communication channels. All private schools were closed, replaced by church-run education systems. Book copying became a monastic monopoly, and the Occitan language was banned in official documents. Dr. Linda Patterson estimates that more than 90% of pre-1200 Occitan literature has since been lost or destroyed. Another factor was institutional restructuring. Legal and political systems were overhauled, with local lords replaced by northern nobles and canon law imposed over regional customs. These reforms were codified in the Treaty of Paris, 1229, which forced the Count of Toulouse to cede 2/3 of his territory to the French crown. Economically, a web of vested interests was created to ensure elite support. Professor William Chester Jordan notes that northern nobles profited from land seizures, merchants from trade control, and the church from new tax rights and property acquisitions. This generated a durable alliance difficult to dislodge internally. The campaign's psychological impact is documented by Dr. Dominique Barthélemy, who identified rising rates of collective trauma and psychological disorders in the 14th to 15th centuries. These included dark folklore and generational silence, a phenomenon researchers call voluntary damnatio memoriae, or collective memory suppression. Social consequences included the dismantling of family and communal structures. Gender-equal participation in religion and economics gave way to patriarchal norms imported from the north. Female economic agency collapsed, with the rate of women owning businesses falling from 30% to just 8% within a single generation. Culturally, the disappearance of the troubadour tradition is telling. From over 400 active poets and musicians in the early 1200s, fewer than 20 remained by 1250. Occitan, once used in law and commerce, was reduced to a peasant vernacular. Resistance took many forms. Armed revolts, like Raymond VII's uprising, 1240 to 1242, drew over 15,000 participants, but failed due to lack of external support and fragmentation. Underground networks of Cathar perfecti, clergy, continued operating clandestinely into the 14th century. Artists and scholars also engaged in coded cultural resistance. According to Dr. Sarah Kay, many courtly love poems contained veiled references to Cathar theology and lost homelands, hidden transcripts embedded within seemingly compliant texts. Although unable to reverse the destruction, these efforts preserved fragments of Occitan identity, laying the groundwork for cultural revivals in later centuries, especially the Félibrige movement of the 19th century. The campaign officially ended around 1255 with the establishment of a permanent inquisition in Toulouse, marking a shift from purging to maintenance. Its completion stemmed from exhaustion of resistance communities after 4 decades of economic and social attrition, full integration of church-controlled legal, educational, and political systems. A new generation raised entirely under the imposed cultural order, lacking direct memory of the old. Professor Mark Gregory Pegg concludes, "The end of the Albigensian campaign was not an event, but a process. Old culture was dismantled as the new was built atop it. The result was a new normal. Returning to the past became not only impossible, but inconceivable." When we study the Albigensian Crusade, we find it to be part of a recurring historical model, not a regional anomaly, but a manifestation of how power reshapes culture. Similar models appear throughout history. In the 16th century, Spanish conquests in the Americas utilized reduction to erase indigenous Aztec and Maya systems. Dr. Inga Klendinen estimates over 500 cities were destroyed and tens of thousands of codices burned. In the 17th to 18th centuries, Ireland's penal laws systematically dismantled Gaelic culture. Professor Kevin Whelan reports a decline in Irish language speakers from 90% to 20%, and closure of over 80% of hedge schools. In the 19th to 20th centuries, cultural assimilation programs like Russification in the Russian Empire and Indian boarding schools in North America followed the same logic. According to Professor James C. Scott in Seeing Like a State, the Albigensian model became a template, refined and reused by modern states to reshape culture through power. Today, UNESCO's 2023 report shows that cultural heritage faces new but familiar threats. There are an estimated 2,500 endangered languages worldwide, with one disappearing every 2 weeks, far faster than in pre-industrial eras. Each lost language erases a unique cultural and knowledge system. Modern cultural destruction occurs through rapid urbanization, standardized education, and global media homogenization. Survival International highlights forced displacements, ritual bans, and monolingual education policies as primary causes, especially in regions like the Amazon, Siberia, and the Himalayas. While contexts have changed, experts see 3 enduring features: use of state or economic power to impose change, targeting core cultural elements like language and religion, creation of economic incentives to reinforce transformation. From the lessons of the Albigensian Crusade and similar historical models, the international community has developed legal mechanisms to protect cultural diversity, though their effectiveness remains limited.